Traditionally, when we think about luck, we think of it in a binary sense. So we think of it as either lucky or unlucky. So either good or bad, one or zero. So, for example, if somebody wins the lottery, you might end like you get one. You might have one person that says, "Hey, this person was really lucky because they won millions, right?" And then you got another person that might say, "Wow, that person was unlucky because look what's happened to all the people who've won the lottery who weren't the kind of person who could handle that much amount of money, right?" But the argument that I want to make is that there is multiple kinds of luck, and I want to talk about how you can try to increase the probability of getting lucky. Now, notice that I said that you're not trying to get luck, right? You're creating luck. You're increasing the probability of actually getting lucky, and in effect, that actually creates luck. But let's talk about it. So, let's talk about the two types of luck. So, I'm going to draw this as a matrix. So instead of seeing this as binary, you can see this as more of a matrix. And is that large enough? Yeah, it's probably fine. Oh, let me just shrink that a bit. I have a rubber here. I should just use that. Right. So you say lucky, and then unlucky. Right. We can, yes. Okay. Lucky or unlucky. Right. You can see this as like a window. Right. And let's say we could say the first type of luck is random or stochastic luck if you're a statistician. So what is random luck? So if you are a religious person, then you might say this is something that is God-given, right? Or if you don't believe in God, but you believe in something like the universe, then you would say this is something that's come from the universe. Or if you believe in neither, then you might say this is just a complete random coincidence, right? The common denominator between all three of those things is that they are beyond your control. They're things that just happened without you having to do anything. And you didn't have to take any specific actions. So an example of that would be, say, being born into a very wealthy household, right? That is something that you did not control. You can't control who your biological parents are, right? That is something that just happened. The next type of luck is going to be causal. And this is what I'm going to focus the majority of the video about. Causal luck isn't necessarily you do one thing and it just the next thing happens, right? But it's you take a certain action, right? And a chain reaction begins, and then a few rungs down that chain, you get some form of luck materializing. So an example of that might be, let's say example, you go to a party. So let's just say we created this node here, going to a party. At this party, you meet a person, right? You meet a guy, you become friends with him, right? That guy likes you, he thinks you're a cool guy. He invites you to another party happening next week. So there you go. So you've been invited to this next party. And at this party, you happen to meet the love of your life. So you met the love of your life, and the reason why this is causal and not random is like, if you didn't go to, you wouldn't have met the love of your life if you didn't go to this party. You wouldn't have gone to this party if you weren't invited, and the only reason you got invited was because you met this person. The only reason you met this person is because you went to this party in the first place. Now, I'm not advocating that you just go to parties and this will happen, but this is just a common example I'm seeing of how people generally find their now wives. So some of my friends, when I've asked them about how they found their now wife, or now wives, I should say because I'm talking about multiple people here, they've all said something kind of similar along the lines of, it just sort of happened. So, and in different contexts. So maybe they met at work, just happened to meet at work. Didn't plan it, but it just sort of happened. Another example is they met online and not through a dating app. Another example could be, they just happened. They happened to go out and they happened to see someone that they found attractive, and then they approached them, had a conversation with them, and then they ended up building a relationship and getting married to them. Right? Those are very common examples, and you've probably seen this in your life, where you've seen someone who's gotten married maybe. If you're younger, then you probably might not have seen this, but if you are a little bit older, then you probably have seen that a lot of marriages that you're seeing from your friends or even family just happened. But this is the best way I can sort of explain this. And I'm going to dive deeper into why this sort of happens in a second, but just conceptually, just take the idea that random luck is something that is beyond your control. Causal luck is something that you have some level of influence over. It's not complete control. And the reason why I say that is a really big distinction to make is because it's not the same thing as a second order consequence or benefit. Now, you might have heard of that term. If you haven't heard of that term, it's basically the effects of something that will happen or that have happened as a result of specific initial conditions. So the example, I actually learned this from Sam Ovens, and the example that he gave was he's trying to build a business, right? And he was deciding whether he should buy a TV. And a salesperson approached him to try to sell him a TV. He realized that what would happen is he would watch this, if he bought a TV, he'd probably want to use it, right? That's pretty logical. If you buy something, you probably want to use it and get some utility out of it. So he buys the TV. He watches the TV. He might even decide to buy a video games console. So he spends more money. And he plays more video games and watches TV. As a result of doing that, he decides to spend less time on his business. And instead of growing his business, he's playing video games and watching TV. As a result, his business no longer grows. It either plateaus or it shrinks, right? Depending on his management, depends on how he delegated and managed the whole thing. And then as a result, business probably fails, and then he loses his money and he does not achieve his original goal. So that's a second order consequence, right? It's like you can sort of see where the logical steps are, right? The difference between that and luck is one factor, and that is predictability. So second order consequences or benefits are predictable. If I do X, then Y will happen. As a result, Z will happen. Kind of guess that, right? But with causal luck, you can't necessarily predict it. You might have a rough educated guess, like, hey, if I go to a party or something, I might end up meeting a person, right? Maybe if you speak to the right person, but you might not, right? Like, yeah, the likelihood is that you probably 7 out of 10 times at least you probably won't meet the right person, but maybe I'm just pulling numbers out of thin air, so don't take those statistics to heart, but you get the idea. Conceptually, somewhat controllable, influenceable, if that's a word, and random or stochastic. Okay, just take that for now. And then this will all make sense, especially towards the end when I sort of loop it all in together. But just conceptually, just take that idea down. That one is controllable, one is not. So let's break that down even further. So we've got luck. So I'm just going to just type this. I said type. Write the word luck. And we've got these two types of luck. So we've got random and we've got causal. Right? We're going to strike off random because that's completely out of your control. You cannot control this. You cannot control random luck. It just happens to you. Within causal luck, you have two factors. And this is where the sentence that I said, causal luck is you can influence it, but you can't control it. It's because there's two factors to it. The first factor is timing. And the second factor is effort. Between the two, you can probably take a guess which one is at least somewhat controllable, which is effort, it's actually completely in your control, which I'll explain in a second. But timing is not in your control. You can strike that off. You cannot control when you will receive the results of or the luck of something, right? So an example I'll give is, and oftentimes actually, if you're the determinant of causal luck, if you're the determinant of the luck happening, then you're probably not the recipient of that luck. So what I mean by that is, say example, if you are determining results day for students, right, to get their exam results. If you're determining that, you're not the one that's going to be receiving the results. It's going to be the students, right? Conversely, if you are someone that is receiving the results, you cannot control when you will receive those results, right? You cannot control when you will get that luck, right? So timing is out of your control. Forget about it. It's completely random. However, effort is controllable, completely actually. or at least mostly. I'll explain very briefly why I believe it's mostly in your control, but there's other small variables that you have to kind of consider as well. And the first is going to be intensity and positioning. That is very small writing. I'm cognizant of that, and I apologize. But most people think of effort as just work applied. But if we can, for now at least, just to explain this concept, let's think of effort as we can think of it as a breakdown of intensity as well as positioning. So intensity is actually work applied, right? So that's actually what you would say is, hey, I'm working hard, or I'm putting in effort here. It's the intensity, right? You're applying something. Positioning is where you apply it, and that's the big one. Now, the reason why I'm not going to harp too much on this bit is because I feel like most people are probably rational enough to determine positioning in terms of achieving their goal. So, say example, if the goal is to, let's say, get wealthy, for example, get rich, then if actually let's give a really good example here, right? So, let's say, for example, this line is the goal, right? Whatever that is, right? And let's say that this circle is your starting point. Let's say let's say example, you decide that the skill set that you want to apply, let's say this is getting wealthy, and let's say the skill set that you want to apply is knitting jumpers, right? And you bust yourself off, like you're like busting your tail off, and you're just putting in a ton of effort here, and a ton of intensity, sorry, here, and you might get this far. You can't even see that. It's like this tiny little arrow, right? Now let's say you decide to learn sales or programming or whatever. Higher leverage skill will probably get you to that end goal, right, of getting wealthy, unless you decide to start like some kind of clothing business and whatever, right? But just take the idea that positioning is about where you're applying your effort, and most people are probably logical enough to determine where to apply effort, like this example, right? If you want to get wealthy, between skill sets that you could choose, you are most likely going to pick something that is going to translate to value into the marketplace, right? Which would be like sales, programming, so either building product or selling their product. Like those are like the core skills for any sort of, I guess, wealth for the most part, I guess, compared to knitting. Now, the reason why I say this is mostly in your control is because there are going to be like some other variables like that are in there, like your personal belief system, your attitude, your IQ, the way you think about things in general. Like those are factors that do play a role in there. I don't want to like exclude it and say, hey, this is 100% in your control, because there are other things that are just smaller variables, and it's probably not fair to just not include them. But it's worth a mention. But for the most part, you can determine your level of intensity and effort, right? So that's basically just me trying to explain how you can at least start up, at least as a starting position. So originally we talked about the two types of luck, random and causal. Within causal, you have a randomness within that, which is timing, but you have something that is controllable, which is effort. And within effort, you have two controllable factors, intensity and positioning. You can choose the positioning, and you can choose the intensity of the amount of effort you decide to apply. Another example, so that was a professional example. Another example will be, say example, you are trying to find someone to, have a long-term relationship with or get married with, right? Let's say the intensity is putting yourself, presenting yourself in a way that would, I guess, creating an offer that would be stupid to say no to, right? Presenting yourself in a way that someone would feel stupid if they said no to going out with you, right? So that could be working out, taking care of yourself, having a good like style sense, just being a well-mannered person in general. It's like all of these like factors, right? That's the intensity, right? So I shouldn't have gotten rid of that line and stuff, but it's fine. You can just vaguely see that. Just imagine the circle and the line again. And let's say this is the goal, get married. This is where your starting point is. The positioning might be, let's say example, you do all of those things, but you never leave your front door. Well, you're not going to go very far at all, if anywhere. I mean, if you use dating apps, then yeah, maybe you might get somewhere, but for the most part, you probably won't get that, right? And realistically, for most people, I mean, you're not saying you would probably never find anyone on a dating app. It's possible, but most people, at least from what I've seen anyway, is that they just normally meet them in real life, and that's how they find that person. It can happen, right? Either way, there's no there's no one size fits all solution to this at all. But for the most part, I think meeting them in real life is probably you have a higher chance of actually getting married, right? So let's say that's so positioning is you don't leave your house. The next is you go to social events, you meet people, blah, 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 blah. You go out of your front door and you apply intensity and positioning, you're more likely to actually get your goal. So that's a personal and a professional example. I realize I am using the sort of very similar examples for both, but it's just easier for me to kind of relate those examples. You can apply this to whatever you want to, but those are just two simple examples, and I'm going to refer to them throughout this video as well, just so that way it's more consistent and easier to digest, because I can appreciate this can be kind of complex, because this was definitely hard for me to understand for a while, or at least try to figure out how to put it into words. So the next thing, and this is something that really caused me massive problems actually, was determining between detachment and action, sort of, or attachment and detachment almost. So let's say example. So normally, I'll explain what I'll do is I'll explain both schools of thought first, and then I'll explain how I've tried to find a way through this. So the first school of thought is if you focus on what you want, you will get it, right? Some people say that's like the law of attraction, and as well as applied to the law of action, like it's completely deterministic that I will achieve X goal if I do X, Y, Z things, right? The other side of that is detachment. I want to achieve X goal, but I'm going to detach from that. Now, the mistake that I certainly made, I don't know how many other people made this, but I would assume that maybe there's probably someone out there who's also made this mistake, is taking the interpretation incorrectly. So the interpretation that I what I would end up doing is I'll just draw this out. So imagine this is two extremes. So you've got one extreme here, and you've got another extreme here. Let's say this is detachment, and then this is like focus, or let's just say this is A, right? Attachment, detachment. And let's say this is me, right? In the middle, right here. I'd start off by saying, yes, I'm in complete control. I can do X, Y, Z things, right? And if you're into self-improvement, you've probably done something similar. I mean, maybe you have, maybe you haven't, I don't know. But this was my general use anyway. I'd say, I want to achieve X goal. I will take these things. I'll be able to achieve this if I focus on it and focus on it and focus on it, right? If I focus on this outcome, I'll be able to achieve it. Then what would happen is, most of the times, I wouldn't achieve it, right? I just wouldn't achieve it, even if I focused on it. Then what would happen is I'll go, okay, let me try the complete opposite side of the things, which is detaching from the outcome. So, well, there we go. So now I'm letting go of it. I'm like, I don't care. So if one extreme is, I really care about this outcome happening, this has to happen, and the other side is, oh, I don't care at all, right? And this was really tricky for me to kind of digest, because I was consuming content from people who were kind of giving both of those opinions, like on the opposite side of the spectrum. So you got one side of things saying, this needs to happen, I need to make this happen, and I believe I can do this, and blah, 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 and you are in complete control. And then you got the other side where you got like philosophers. I remember there was a philosopher that I listened to from this video from The Pursuit of Wonder, about Michael de Montaigne, I believe his name was, and he talks about this idea of just don't care and it will happen, right? So I kind of flip-flopped between both, and none of it worked. So what I've kind of realized, and this is kind of true with most things, is that this is kind of true between things that are in most things in life, is between two extremes, the optimal outcome is probably in the middle, somewhere in the middle anyway. It's never really either extreme, and I could dive into a whole video explaining just this this one point here, but for most part of it, just take the idea that if you have two extremes, normally the optimal outcome is probably somewhere in the middle for you, for most people at least anyway. and this is just based on my current set of observations. Who knows how my observations might change in 5 years' time, but this is just what I've currently observed over the past few years. So between two extremes, this middle ground. So what does this middle ground look like? Because I could say this from a philosophical point of view, but how do you actually apply that? So most of the times when we think about a goal, we equate it to an outcome, right? So let's say, example, the goal is to get married, and you can't see that. Again, this pen is starting to run out of ink, actually. Let's just do that. G equals O. In case you can't see that, it says G equals O, right? Yeah, it's sort of visible. All right, so G equals O. So we think of G stands for goal and O stands for outcome, right? So we normally think of an outcome happening as the goal. So say, for example, if you wanted to get a promotion. So in sales, there's kind of like a ladder, right? If you think of it like a ladder, like the entry-level roles are like being like a business development representative, where you would be like setting appointments, setting up meetings with potential prospective clients. And then the account executive, who would be the person who would be closing those said prospective clients. So you can think of the goal as, getting that promotion, right? Now, what the logical sort of train of thought is, okay, to get this promotion, here's all the things I need to do and all the things that need to happen as a result. So you could say, if I book X number of meetings a day, then and 70% of them are good fits, then I will have a promotion, right? But what normally happens is you say that you kind of create this sort of chain of things that need to happen that are out of your control. So you would say, oh yeah, so in order to get this promotion, so I'm sticking with this example because it's just easy to just digest, or at least easy for me to explain, sorry. To get this promotion, right, which is not completely in your control, by the way, you would say, I need X, Y, Z things to happen first in order for me to get that promotion. And then you end up attaching to those outcomes instead, those mini outcomes. And then some of them don't happen, some of them do, and you're kind of confused. You're like, I don't know what to do. And you might end up just giving up, right? That's common because you get tired, your brain gets tired of getting disappointed, and yeah, you're stuck. And the thought process behind this, again, is based on the reticular activating system. So if you've heard of that word, it's basically, if you've not heard of that word, I'll quickly explain what it is. It's a part of your brain that basically filters out your stimulus in your environment, so that way you can survive. And it does this by determining what's important to you. So say, for example, if you decide to buy, let's say, an Audi A3, right? And you have a weekly drive to the grocery store, to the supermarket, to the park, whatever, wherever, right? Your reticular activating system might start to notice more Audi A3s as you're driving, right? Those Audi A3s were always there, but you now notice them because it's now part of your life. And then as a result, this is where the whole focus on what you want and you'll get it argument happens, like kind of plays into it, right? So like the first argument, focus on what you want and you'll get it, is because you're applying this law of attraction and a law of action. I don't believe in that, but some people do. I'm not going to judge their beliefs. That's just my opinion anyway. So normally people will use the justification of the reticular activating system to say, hey, if I focus on what I want, I will get it, right? Because I'm using my RAS to filter out the stimuli. And then you've got the opposite side of the spectrum, which is like, hey, I'm just going to detach. So goal equals outcome, what most people do. And then that outcome is out of their hands because someone else or some other circumstance, whatever, determines that. Then you've got a bunch of mini outcomes, which are also, some of which might be controllable, some of which might not be. And then you just get disappointed and you might just quit. So that's just to sum up. So how do you get past this? The way I've tried to get through this is this middle ground that I talked about between complete detachment and complete attachment, is by setting another goal So we're going to call this G1, we're going to call this G2, and this is focused on P, which is process. So G1 equals O, so the goal is like this desire that you have, right? And you still want to keep this, by the way. However, and G2 equals P, which is process. So this is what you want, the end goal to have happen. So this could be like, say, for example, getting married or getting a promotion or achieving X, Y, Z, whatever, right? But this is a set of controllable things that you can do. So you want to basically, the way you want to do this is you want to set like this, have this initial desire, but you want to let go of that attachment to getting that desire. And the way that I've kind of, which by the way is really hard. So like, for example, if it's like trying to book like calls, like meetings on a cold call, right? You can't control whether someone's even going to pick up the phone. Like you can't. That's out of your control. What you can control is how many calls you make, how many dials you do. If you say, I want to do 50 calls a day or 100 calls a day, you can do that, right? So you can basically take away your attachment from the outcome and attach it to the process, which is controllable. Because what ends up happening is if you try to attach to the outcome, you will attach your self-worth and your identity to this goal happening. And if it doesn't happen, then you will just brand yourself as a loser and a failure, and then you just feel like crap, and then, you just quit. It's like, oh, this isn't for me. But if you focus on the specific actions and then have that desire that happens, this might happen or it might not happen. This is completely out of your control. The processes that you take to actually achieving that outcome increase the likelihood of it happening. Notice that I'm emphasizing that very, very strongly. It increases the probability of it happening or the likelihood of it happening. It does not guarantee that it will happen. Because you can't. You physically can't guarantee it. Anyone that tells you that you can absolutely guarantee certain things will happen is either being is either thinking very simplistically, very naively, or they're just they just have a very large ego complex and they believe they can control everything in the universe. In fact, the reality is that most things are beyond your control. Unfortunately, there are very few things that are within your control, and this is where we talk about effort, intensity, as well as positioning. You can control those things, but you focus on the process. If you focus on the process and you're attached to this process, then you increase the surface area of getting to that outcome. So here's how this sort of ties back in, right, to everything we're talking about. Your end goal to getting the outcome is to ultimately, what I've talked about so far, so the intensity, the positioning, the process, right, which is basically, both of those two things, right, intensity as well as positioning, right? Positioning would be what the process is, and then intensity is actually just doing it, right? So those things, that whole effort thing, that is literally to increase the lux surface area. So think of it as like a circle, right? So let's say, example, you sit on your hands, do nothing, you do not put any effort into your physical health, and you never go outside, you never talk to people ever, then your lux surface area is like a dot. And you can't even see that. Even if I did draw an actual dot, it's just sort of like having like a dust mark on there, sort of. There you go. You can't even see that on camera. I can barely see it from this distance, but you don't really have any luck. Your lux surface area is tiny. It's minute. It's basically non-existent. Let's say you start taking care of yourself. So start taking care of your health. Your lux surface area goes up a little bit. You still can't see it clearly, but it increases. You've got a circle now. Now, let's say, example, you decide not only to take care of yourself, like physically, but you take care of your mental health, you start to learn more, you start to study more, you become more well-versed in various topics of interest. Your lux surface area goes up more. Now let's say that, so this is all intensity so far. Now let's say that you also position yourself to go and meet people who maybe are interested in the same thing. So say, example, if you're interested in, say, history, or let's say you're interested in British history, for example, and you go to a gathering like an evening or something where people are just discussing history, or a lecture of some history professor talking about history, and there's like in between there's like a break, and you're just talking to random people and meeting people, right? Your luck surface area has now gone up substantially. So to sum up, basically all the things I've talked about. So I've talked about the types of luck, right? Which is random and causal. And actually, before I quickly wrap this video up, I'm going to go back to that original example about like finding the love, right? So we're going to start with goal, so love. And this is going to tie back into the whole thing I've talked about this whole video, right? And then we've got these nodes here, right? These nodes are events, things that just happened, right? And this is you. Let's say the goal is finding love, right? So what do? You start taking action. You start putting in effort, which is intensity and positioning. So deciding to take care of your physical health, right? Pretty common one. Start reading on things that are interesting, and broadening your knowledge base, right? Or your data sets if you're a Luke Belmar fan. You start to care more about your fashion sense, right? You start applying all this work, right? And let's say you're a single person and you want to get into a relationship. So you want to get, so your goal is to get into a relationship, right? And you start applying all this work, which is intensity and positioning. And then as a result of the positioning aspect, you end up meeting this person here. So you end up meeting this person who ends up inviting you to this party, and which is completely out of your hand because this is causal luck again. Yes, you went to the party, but you also had to take care of yourself and put yourself in a position where you could get lucky, right? Because let's say example, I don't know, maybe let's say example you start taking care of your physical health and you meet this person at the gym, right? And he invites you to a party or something, I don't know, whatever, right? So you end up meeting this person, you go to this party, then at that party, you get invited to another party, and then you find the love of your life. But the love of your life said yes because your luck surface area was so large that the offer was so good to say. The offer was so good that they would feel stupid saying no to, basically. If that makes sense. I realize that was a bit of a long-winded explanation. I am trying my best to explain this without a script. I normally just have like a laptop with like a few bullet points, right? So bear with me. So again, just to recap, so you set this goal of that. So your situation is you're single, and you would like to find love, right? And that's the end goal, finding love. You start taking effort. You start determining the position of where you should go. So you decide to. You decide you need to go out more, right? So you're going out more. And you apply intensity, so effort. You start taking care of your physical health. You start dressing nicer. You start having better hygiene. You're more well versed in various topics, and you're well spoken, and you're kind, you're generous. You're working on your manners, maybe, whatever that is. So you're applying all of this work, right? And you're a single person who wants to find love. As a result of taking certain actions, you are now increasing your luck surface area. So you're increasing that luck surface area, and then you end up meeting that person, right? But had you not taken care of yourself, or had you not, done certain things or gone to that party or whatever, then you wouldn't have actually, you wouldn't have had that chance, right? That end result wouldn't have happened if you didn't do all of these, if these things didn't just happen. And these things only happened because the luck surface area was wide enough for it to happen. So, to sum up, basically, all of what I've said in, I guess, a couple of sentences, the way that you want to increase the likelihood of luck happening to you is to increase your luck surface area. And to increase your luck surface area, you need to apply effort, which is equal to intensity multiplied by positioning. And You just need to take more shots. And that's it. Because if you don't, like, for example, if you go to a party, you might not find that person. You might not get on with someone, like, in like on a professional sense. Like, you can go to a lot of networking events, and most of them might be duds. Like, maybe there's a good chance that at least 7 out of 10 are probably going to be useless. 2 out of 10 might have been somewhat useful, but 1 out of 10 might have been extremely useful and helpful. But that extremely useful and helpful network of people that you developed wouldn't have happened had you just not taken enough shots. Which if you do, then you increase the likelihood of it happening. So the way you increase your luck surface area is you focus on your positioning, because that's really key, and then you apply intensity to that, which is effort, right? Which is what we are equating to effort, right? And then you just focus on taking more shots. If you do those things, you increase the likelihood that something good can happen to you. Or at least you can increase the likelihood of luck happening. And that's it. That's the best way at this moment in time that I have come to figure out how to create luck. Or at least increase the probability of creating luck, I should say. And if you disagree with this, or if there's anything that you feel that's a little bit different, please let me know. Please disagree. Please, like, yeah, you don't have to just take my word for gospel. Like, I think I can't remember. It's been a long time since I made a video, but normally when I try to end videos, I normally try to encourage more people to just not just take everything I say as gospel, and to try to think it through for themselves and come to their own conclusions. If you agree with it, then great. If you disagree with it, great. Let me know where maybe there's something that I've missed out on. And yeah, but if you did enjoy this video, then please drop a like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you again next time. And please let me know if you found this helpful. Thanks.